So welcome everyone to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and we're here for a session all about empowering growth through automation. Our guests today are Ray Emerzian of DocStar and Darris Crandall of Analytical Capital, as well as Tom Franceschi of DocStar. It's great to have them with us for this session, and as we get started, please do know that we do welcome your questions at any point. Enter them into the Q&A block you should see to the right of the main presentation area, and I know that the presenters will be leaving time at the end to take your questions. So without any further delay, I'm going to hand things off to Ray to get things started. I'm just going to take you off mute here.
Thanks, Jason, and we appreciate Dynamics pulling this call together and helping us facilitate this, and thanks to everyone who's taking the time to join the call this morning. My name is Tom Franceschi. I'm stepping in with Ray, and I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the DocStar business, and I'm going to handle the introductions for the call today, and then bring some other people in, including Ray, as you mentioned, and Darris, and we also have Cody Zink with us. Cody is going to help us with the demonstration this afternoon. So we appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. We know time is extremely valuable, and we intend to drive some value for you today for participating in the session with us. So we're going to spend a couple of minutes talking about DocStar, and I guarantee you that that's not the star of the show. The star of the show is the conversation with Darris and the demo that Cody's going to do. So we'll get through that fairly quickly. We've got a nice conversation with Darris. He's a customer of DocStar and uses the GP product. So he's going to talk a little bit about his experiences with the solution. And Cody's going to do a product demo for you to give you some insight as to what the product looks like and how it works with the GP solution. And then we'll open the lines up for a little Q&A to end the session. So just a little bit about DocStar. DocStar's been around in this enterprise content management space since 1996. We're heavily focused on helping customers drive business outcomes through process automation. Over the course of the last 20 years, we've accumulated quite a number of customers in a lot of different markets and a lot of different industry segments. So it's highly likely that regardless of what industry you work in or business process that you want to work with, today we're talking about AP automation, but we handle other business processes as well. We've got some experience in that area. We've got lots of, in that 2,000 customer plus number, we've got lots of GP integrated customers. We've been working in that space for quite some time and been active in the community for quite a number of years, participating in the different community events that occur from time to time. DocStar is a browser-based application, primarily built from the ground up 3 or 4 years ago as a cloud-based application. We've got quite a number of customers that are on our cloud platform at this point. As I mentioned, it's a browser-based solution that can be delivered either way, either on-premises or in the cloud. So we provide you with the ultimate flexibility as to how you want to deploy the product. And the beauty of the solution is it's the same code base, it's the same user interface, it's largely the same functionality that you receive regardless of the deployment method that you choose and how you want to work with us. So lots of organizations that are on our cloud, lots of organizations in our on-premise solution. For those of you who are somewhat familiar with our organization, you'll see a new logo and some new brand concepts that we're introducing over the next 30 days. It's part of our growth initiative and repositioning initiative as we drive the organization for the next 20 years of growth, a refresh along with some concepts for what we want to deliver in terms of value to our customers. So we're all very excited. Hopefully you'll visit us at our website to check out some of those changes and see the new look and feel. So what do we do and how do we help you become successful? As I mentioned before, we're leading organizations through their digital transformation with a heavy emphasis on process automation and helping organizations effectively drive efficiency within the organization. We're a very flexible organization in the way we work, and that we want to work the way that you want us to work with you to help enable your business processes and build our solution to be effective in your organization. Ultimately, we're all about driving business growth. Most organizations today are focused on driving top-line growth while minimizing the related impact on administrative processes. So we're all about helping you drive growth while either maintaining a consistent cost basis or reducing your cost basis by driving efficiency in your organization. And we do that with a solution that's, you'll see in a few minutes when Cody does his demo, very visually appealing, easy to use, easy to learn, yet contains very robust functionality, and we drive a lot of innovation with our solution, and that's where we're focused today and as we drive into the future. As I mentioned before, we've got great industry knowledge amongst a number of different verticals, specifically within accounts payable automation. We've seen a lot of different environments and helped a lot of organizations drive growth and become successful with their transformation to digital processes and drive efficiency. And overall, we're a large ECM provider with a global footprint, so we see organizations of all sizes across industries and all across the world. So with that, I'm going to just bring into the conversation Darris and Ray for the discussion portion, where Darris is going to give us a perspective on his experience with our solution. Darris Crandall is a systems controller for Analytical Capital Management. Darris is located in New York City. He holds a Series 7 license and a Series 7 certified and has 20 years experience in corporate finance, including, and this is important because it's one of the areas we've worked with him on, strong experience base in analytical accounting. He also holds a chemical engineering degree and a finance degree, so he was busy getting his education in line before he started. And if you've met Darris, very sharp man. Ray Emerzian is a Senior Director of Professional Services and Product Management with DocStar. He's been with DocStar since the late 90s. He's got over 2 decades experience in this space and has a deep understanding of business analysis for organizations, driving automation to help them achieve their objectives, and in consulting with them to make sure that we get customers where they want to be. One of Ray's primary focuses is making sure that when a customer decides to implement our solution, it's not just about installing software, it's about driving business outcomes. And we're heavily influenced, heavily dependent on that from an organizational standpoint on making you successful. So let's bring Darris and Ray into the conversation. Welcome, Darris.
Hi.
Welcome,
hello,
Ray.
everyone.
Hello. Thank you, Tom. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of discuss with Darris on this call is get his perspective and help us demonstrate for everybody on the call a little bit of what it means to actually have deployed an AP automation solution and how that's impacted the organization. As Tom mentioned, I've been doing this quite a while, and one of the things that never ceases to amaze me is the difference in the culture in the organization after they've gone ahead and deployed an AP automation solution or other business process automation solution, and how it changes and transforms the way they work. And in fact, one of the top things that I noted about Darris' situation is how dramatically it impacted his organization. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that happened for him and his organization in a moment, but very much due to the analytical accounting and the complexity of what he and his organization were dealing with, AP automation had a profound impact in their environment. So Darris, let's just jump right into how did AP automation affect the way you and your team actually work?
For us, we knew it was kind of a no-brainer. I came here 3 years ago, and one of my first orders of business was to implement a new general ledger. That initiative ended up changing scope a little bit, and as it turned out, the project then became take the general ledger you have and make it better. And we had Great Plains version 2010 at the time. We upgraded to GP 2013. And we knew right away, just because of the workflow and how poorly things were internally in terms of our accounts payable department's ability to get things paid. And I always use this as the example, but this idea that invoices can come into the firm or into the building in a bunch of different ways. A vendor might email one to a functional contact. They might email one or stick one in the mail. It shows up at reception. So we would have examples of 3 or 4 invoices, same exact invoice, being approved and submitted to accounts payable for payment. And it was really the onus was on the accounts payable department to make sure we weren't sending due payments out the door. And so that, in my opinion, is kind of a textbook case of, wow, this is clearly broken and not working as you would intend it. And then, secondly, from that, in that same line of thinking, we would be looking for invoices in the firm and have no idea where they were. Could they have shown up at reception and the mail never got routed around? Are they being held by a business manager because they're disputing part of it with the vendor? And so trying to find out what we should be paying and when and where things are, it was really a simple leap for us that we needed a system. So we went to one of the Microsoft-sponsored events, and as you can imagine, at any one of these events, there are hundreds of different vendors that offer all these different solutions, and we wanted to have a bake-off, and we did that with a series of automated AP solutions, and we ultimately landed with you guys for a variety of reasons I'll discuss later.
Thank you, Darris. Now, just real quickly, I don't think we mentioned this, but what business are you in?
We're in financial services. We're in financial services. We're a mortgage REIT, but you could honestly, you could factor that out of the mix. What's important is we get bills, we have to pay bills, and we're a publicly traded company, so for that reason, we have to be very accountable, not just to the vendors that we pay, but to external auditors, to internal auditors, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of scrutiny on being able to provide support and backup. So if you go to those examples I gave initially, auditors come around at the end of the year, they're scoping out a variety of samples, and you can't locate the invoices that they happen to select for sampling. You look foolish, to say the least, that you don't even have those records available.
So obviously this helps in compliance and gives you a benefit in terms of being able to instantly locate documents and be able to produce them so that you and your team obviously can answer any requests coming from auditors or internal personnel. So how would you compare your level of faith in DocStar to your Dynamics GP as a critical business tool in your organization?
Well, obviously, with in-scope applications, anything that funnels to the general ledger, you obviously need to have tight controls around those. General ledger clearly in scope for that. So for us, Great Plains is a system that I hadn't used until I got here. I don't know exactly what the users on the call are using for an ERP system, but Great Plains, I think anybody who's familiar with it knows that out of the box it needs a little bit of help. So with that, most Microsoft GP installs, you have a number of ISVs that go along with them to get you where you need to be, whether it's Multi-Entity Manager or McCorma or FastPath Security. And in the case of an ISV for AP Workflow, GP 2013 version 1 really didn't have the workflow and invoice approval inherent in the system that we needed. Enter DocStar to solve that problem for us. And so you asked what level of faith, I guess. My faith, I guess, you think about GP and what you really end up with an install. The onus is really on your IT department and whoever is responsible for administering your general ledger, but you really, the comfort that you have in your general ledger is only as good as the comfort you have in all the pieces that make that up. And so obviously that vendor selection process for us was very important because we did have a lot of reliance on having our documents stored and searchable and being able to meet all of our audit requirements. So I guess you could say I probably got more faith in DocStar than I have in Great Plains.
Thank you for that. Well, how did DocStar's knowledge of Dynamics GP and all the associated third-party products that you guys use in your environment come across as a whole solution for you and your team? And did we demonstrate the knowledge that you were looking for when you first looked for a solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I mentioned, I went to one of the Microsoft, I forget if it was the GPUG conference or if it was one of the larger Microsoft conferences, but I went there, the sole purpose was to find an AP solution. and I had dozens of conversations and had a short list of must-have technical specs, and that list kept getting shorter and shorter. There were a lot of no's when I would bring up the fact that we were working with analytical accounting for tracking different types of project metrics, and we were using analytical accounting for some budgeting and cost center reporting. And so, it honestly quickly got down to a list of people who knew the underpinnings of Great Plains, and you guys were really a standout in the sense that as we had the bake-off, that I was extremely fair in terms of giving all the vendors that I got down to the final list of 4 or 5 the ability to demonstrate their knowledge of Great Plains and the table structures and functionality that Great Plains had and what we really needed out of it. You, your staff, and everybody I dealt with on the project clearly understood Great Plains in a way that made me comfortable moving forward.
Thank you, Darris. We really appreciate that, obviously. So what would you say at this point if we were to take away the solution? Would your team be a little upset at that? Not having access to...
Yeah, I mean, it's mission critical for us. We use it, not only is it in all of our controls and processes and procedures, but if we didn't have this solution, we would need another one tomorrow. Like, it's having an accounts payable department without a paperless solution or an integrated solution is extremely frustrating and difficult, and looking back now, quite antiquated. It's fascinating to me how difficult it was before we had all of our documents OCR stored so that we could search on keywords. We have, within our build, we've got different security classes. So instead of worrying about who's got a key to get into the filing room, and you have to hide things in certain desk drawers because there are legal situations or HR situations, we're able to store things in different security classes and wall them off electronically so people can only see what we want them to see or what they should be able to see. It would be very antiquated to work without it.
Well, and now really to the point of this presentation, how do you feel this empowers your organization for growth? Because as you guys are growing, you do need systems and processes in place, and how do you feel DocStar helps you with that?
Well, at a minimum, it frees up time and resources. It allows us to do more with less in terms of we don't need to take time at the end of every month end to send someone into the file room for half of their day to alphabetize invoices. It eliminates the need to have a resource to field those phone calls where you've got business managers from all around different areas of the firm that need to do their own research, or they're putting together their own analytics, or they're reviewing a vendor relationship, and hey, can I see the last 2 years of invoices from vendor XYZ? All that stuff is readily available, provided they have the right security class to pull it up. So same is true for internal audit. Instead of needing to send a resource into the file room to pull a set of 50 or 100 sample invoices, run the risk of those invoices disappearing and never coming back, run the risk of going into the file room and those invoices aren't even there to pull, all this stuff is electronically stored. So it gives us a comfort level to know that all the documents are where they should be, and it provides a burden of truth. So if we've got a vendor relationship where we're being called out maybe internally, or we're being called out by a vendor that says, hey, why haven't we received payment? We're able to pull up the images on the fly, on the phone. We've got related documents set up on ours so that anything that's tied to a vendor ID or a check number, so we're able not only to pull up the invoice, but any contracts that are associated with that vendor, any checks that are associated, or wire confirmations, any type of W-4 tax forms, we've got it all at our fingertips, and it's all able to be pulled up while we're literally having a conversation with these people on the phone. So I mentioned externally, same situation is true internally. We've got, you could have a situation where you're being asked, why is this late? Why are they turning off, why are they turning a certain service off? And we can pull it up quickly and say, well, we got this invoice in, it's been sitting somewhere waiting for approval, and it's kind of it's also a CYA tool for the accounts payable department. It allows us to be able to defend ourselves and to at least give truth and shed light on where things are anywhere in the building and in the process.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Darris. As always, it's a pleasure to deal with you and your organization. And at this point, I'm going to hand this back over to Tom, because I think he might have a couple of additional questions.
Sure. So Darris, I've spoken to you about this a couple of times in the past, and I'm just curious, because I'm sure a lot of the people that are on the call are either sort of on the fence as to whether they want to implement something, or maybe having some level of difficulty getting it approved within their organization. So if you could, what advice do you have for those that are sort of on the fence as to whether they want to implement a solution? And then secondarily, what have been the biggest benefits that you think a CFO or a CEO would resonate with a CFO or a CEO to get them to approve the project and green light implementation of a solution like this?
I guess if there's one thing that I can add to that really I think is that probably a good selling point, if I had to sell it all over again, at least sell it all over again internally, is the fact that we thought going into it that we would use it for other things beyond just accounts payable. And that was kind of a wishful promise when I was putting the presentations together internally. But there is no doubt that there is truth to that now. We use it for a variety of things. From we use it as part of our vendor management, so we've got onboarding forms that we use. We use it for different types of documents that have nothing to do with accounts payable at all. We use it for different types of wire confirmations or trade confirmations that are far away from the accounts payable realm of the business. And one of the selling points on it too was that this isn't something that every time we want to make a switch or make a modification on, it doesn't mean dollars out the door for as much as I love working with you guys, I don't want to pay you every time I have to do something. And the fact that the user interface for building workflows for myself and a couple of the other guys that are admins within the system, we can really self-serve, and it doesn't mean we tie up a lot of our IT resources, but more importantly, we don't have to spend consulting dollars to get new things off the ground. So it is very valuable in the sense that it grows internally and you get a lot more out of it quickly, a quicker return on your investment, I think, than we really expected.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned the word empowerment, and that's an important word for us because we're not just about empowering organizations for growth, but we're about empowering individual team members in our customer organizations to be able to self-administer and self-manage the project, or not the project, but the development of workflows and the use of the technology so that you become capable of building out the solution as you go forward and aren't always dependent on us. Of course, we're always willing to help, but it's about empowering you guys to be successful on a day-to-day basis. And it's not just a word, that's the way we design our technology and our tools and our solution to be easy to use for our customers. And let me just close with this one last question. Darris, for those that are sort of on the fence and they're a little apprehensive about doing it, maybe not quite sure they're going to get what they intended to get or what they think they'll get, any advice for them?
I guess I would just say I was at one point in the same situation. I've been doing this a long time. I deal with a lot of vendors. When I get a vendor that actually delivers on what is expected, I value that relationship greatly, and if I didn't feel that way about you guys, I clearly wouldn't be on the call. I truly think that this solution, and if you're using Great Plains and if you're in a similar situation that we were in, Yeah, like I said, there are a million new tech companies out there, new ones coming on all the time. And I spoke with a lot of them, at least in the world of the AP solution. You guys really checked off a lot of the boxes and a lot more of the boxes than anybody else that was out there. And it wasn't just a sales pitch. That rang true in terms of delivery and post-install service. Anytime we've had a problem, not that we needed to call you a lot, but we like to explore our options a lot in terms of, hey, can we do this? What if we do this? And you guys were always there with good advice and were able to lead us down the right path. So I think I like the product and I like the support we get from you guys on it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Darris. You know, we all understand that technology implementations typically have a couple of bumps in the road, and we know that's going to happen typically, and we're always there to support it and make sure that we get everyone through that. So, Darris, thank you very much for taking the time. I think you're going to stay on for a few minutes in case there's any questions, but if not, we appreciate your willingness to participate and share your insights with the group. With that, we'll move on to the next phase of the presentation. Cody Zink is going to do a presentation regarding the DocStar product and give you some insight into how it looks and what it's like to work with on a day-to-day basis. So, Cody?
All right, thank you, Tom. As Tom mentioned, we're going to spend a few minutes reviewing and discovering the DocStar Smart AP automation solution. To kind of set the stage, I have Dynamics GP up and running, and I've gone ahead and created a couple purchase orders. I have received some goods on those purchase orders, and we've also received some invoices. So to just show a couple of those real briefly here, you can see here's an invoice from ABC Metals, very basic invoice, nothing really extraordinary here. This particular one, you know, $3,000, nothing too extravagant. There's also some additional ones here, which are Nordstrom supplies, PO-based. Here's a PO number that's been provided for about $4,000. So, you know, generally speaking, these are very standard invoices, which I've already taken the liberty of putting through our intelligent data capture system. Now, the intelligent data capture system, which is the first part of our two-part DocStar Smart AP solution, automatically identifies a lot of the key elements on the invoice documents. It uses information on the page to try and identify these key fields and extract them, which saves the user, obviously, a significant amount of time in key entry. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up our DocStar document management solution. The DocStar document management solution offers, obviously, the document retrieval option, but more importantly, this workflow section, which provides us with a list of documents which are ready to be processed. Now, the documents in this case made it in because I had already sent them through intelligent data capture. These could have come in from scanning, through email. The vendor could have sent these directly to us through an email inbox, which had previously been configured. Several different mechanisms could be configured. I know Darris mentioned that during the discussion he had with Ray previously. But in this particular case, you can see that we have several PO-based invoices that are present. As you can see, here is a PO-based one because the workflow name indicates that it is PO with lines. Just to give you an example, if we expand this section, we have two lines here which identify that part number 00C3 on the invoice for $250, on the PO for $250, on the invoice for $230. So because there's a difference here and a mismatch, it's asking us to perform some sort of review and essentially handle the exception case and manage that situation. Now, how we prefer to do that would be completely up to the user, and depending on the situation, we could handle that in whatever way necessary. Here's another one. Let's go ahead and open this up. Again, this is a PO-based invoice. You can see we have a PO number here, 4994. In this case, this PO number wasn't found. So perhaps this was a mistake on the part of the vendor, whatever the case may be. You can see over on the left-hand side as well, we have all the information available, which has been captured from the page. These fields are all searchable for partial matches, ranges, value searches. This is also key in the workflow processing. So for example, because this invoice is over $30,000, we could use the workflow to set up rules that allow us to route this for specific special approvals when that invoice amount exceeds a specified threshold. So to give an example of that, let's take a look at our workflow designer. And this is a tool which, again, Darris mentioned earlier on our call today. In this example, this is the tool that we use to build our Pio Invoice Workflow. So all Pio invoices that come into the DocStar document management solution will follow these steps. And as you can see, we have a start step and we have an end step here. So if we start at the beginning and we follow the arrows, these are the steps that are taking place. Now, there's quite a few steps for this Pio Invoice Workflow, but most of these steps are actually exception cases because at the beginning we're just indexing the invoice, which is happening automatically for the most part. Then we perform our three-way match, and that's the example that we saw moments ago where the two lines had a mismatch and required some sort of user intervention to make the corrections that were necessary. If there was any sort of issue with this, such as no purchase order was found, there was an amount mismatch in the totals between the purchase order and the invoice, or if one of the lines wasn't received, this would be routed to someone for exception handling. Otherwise, if those exceptions were resolved or there weren't any issues, this is the amount-based threshold routing, which I mentioned moments ago. So in this example, if it's over $10,000, it would go to the CFO for approval. And then accounts payable gets notified of its readiness for transaction creation. So here you can see it would create the transaction, and that particular document would be completed and archived and could be easily retrieved by searching later.
So Cody, that looks like a pretty easy to use interface. Is that actually where you design workflows, or is that just the result of designing workflows?
That is where you would design your workflows. That is absolutely correct. Okay. So moving on, let's look at another example. So with that document, let me open that one up again. There's a few other things I wanted to point out on the screen as well. Under the line item section, you can see that the line item detail from this invoice has also been extracted. Within this section, a similar section could be used for GL coding. And by the way, any fields which are directly a result of information which is present in GP, so for example, general ledger accounts, vendor IDs, address IDs, things like that, are populated as a type to find or type ahead field with the information coming directly from our integration with GP. So as you click in the box and start typing, it automatically populates with information that comes directly from GP. And there's also related documents which appear as another section which allows you to find related documents where information that's common between the two documents are present. So for example, on a PO-based invoice, documents which are receiving documents, packing slips, etc. would automatically show up within that section, which makes it easy to match and verify. One other thing I'd like to show as well. In GP, we also have a retrieval button, which is a customization to GP, which allows us to pull up existing invoices. And with the retrieve button, it will take you directly to the document, which pertains to the transaction that you're looking at. It pulls it up directly within the DocStar interface.
Okay, thanks, Cody. We really appreciate it. Good job.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to open the call up to any questions that anyone on the line might have.
All right, great. And a question did come in here, Tom, I think just related to Cody's demonstration. Can you click and show us the retrieve?
Sure.
There's a couple of ways that you can retrieve within our system. The first way is if you're in a GP screen, we embed a button, and basically as Cody just clicked on that button, now clearly it didn't retrieve a document. But the way the system works is that will launch a search in the DocStar system and retrieve the document related to that customer or related to that invoice, and within the DocStar screen, it will also present any related documents associated with it. So that's one way you can search for any document within the system, is directly from the GP system. Of course, that requires you to drill down to that specific item. Cody, can we show within DocStar the Google search functionality to be able to search for anything? Because the second way, and sort of the preferred way that we recommend customers search for items in our system is we call it our Google search functionality for obvious reasons, where you can just go into our application in the top search bar and put in any attribute associated with the document, and then it's going to pull that document up. So you can search by invoice number, you could search by invoice date, you could search for all the invoices related to that vendor. So we really provide two options in the way that you can retrieve documents, really multiple, but two obvious ones are Google search and from any retrieve button that's embedded in one of the screens, one of the customer or one of the GP screens. And we have that retrieve button embedded in multiple screens throughout the GP application.
Okay, I want to make another call for questions here. If you do have any others, this would be the time to get them in. We also have just a very brief poll question to put up just to kind of gauge your interest. If you wanted to talk more offline or just indicate that, you could do that now. It's your option. And Ray, you might just want to close that on your own window there. All right, I'm just going to check the question queue again. Question about analytical accounting. Can you talk about how that works?
Can I talk about analytical accounting?
Darren, that might,
Darris,
that might be one that you can handle for us. That'd be great, because you've got some great experience with it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, analytical accounting is a module that you can turn on within Great Plains. That it used to be multi-dimensional accounting, or I think is what it was called in prior versions. But we use analytical accounting because we needed it to, or we wanted it to interface with all, both GL and cash as well as AP transactions. So in brief, we just basically use it as additional fields. We track a lot of different things in it. We track projects and cost centers, and on a vendor level, we have it set up so that we track allocation methods on vendors. It's basically another layer of data that if you don't want to use a segment within your GL account string, you can designate AA codes to cover that type of data collection. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Darris. There's also a follow-up about how we work with it, and basically allows us to take that information and work together with GP to determine the allocations when an invoice comes in, and make sure that through our process we're allocating the invoice to the right segments. So it's an integral part of our integrated solution. Be happy to show you guys in more detail.
And I'll be honest, this is Darris again, when I was shopping vendors, there were very few out there that had any experience whatsoever working with analytical accounting. So, you know, in our case, we'd already made that decision when we moved to GP13 that we were going to use it for a variety of things. And so finding someone that had even heard about it, or, you know, more specifically knew how to work with it, was a very important part of the decision for us.
Okay, we have a question from that came in from David to explain the learning process of scanning invoices for vendors.
Sure. There's actually a couple different mechanisms that are in place for the intelligent data capture as far as learning goes. The first is our invoice action package, which actually uses some key anchor points on the page. So that's text like invoice number, invoice #, invoice no, key words and phrases that appear on the page, whereas generally speaking, the actual invoice number would appear just to the right of that or just underneath that. So we look for those key phrases, and then we try and identify something that looks like an invoice number that surrounds that phrase. And using that methodology, you know, typically speaking, we get a good 60% extraction rate out of that. As far as the learning process goes, We use another technology called AutoFind, which uses some key piece of information that's unique to that specific vendor, such as a phone number or a 9-digit zip code. And whenever the intelligent data capture system sees that information on the page, it knows which specific vendor it's looking at. Along those lines too, you can click capture information that's also present on the page, and when you're clicking on that information, it's also recording where on the page that information was found for that specific vendor. The next time an invoice comes in from that vendor and it sees that unique information, the phone number, the zip code, it recalls where the clicking occurred last time, and it looks in that same place to try and find that information. So that's essentially the AutoFind technology that we use as well. So the two of those combined with the automated extraction and the trained extraction allows us to achieve a very accurate learning functionality.
Okay. Thanks, Cody.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions at this point, so I'll make a final call here, but we'll also begin wrapping up, I think. So we did record today's event. We'll be making that available shortly. You'll also see a quick survey after you leave today. Any feedback you can give about your experience would definitely be appreciated. It should only take about 15 or 20 seconds to do that. And I just want to thank all our presenters today. So Darris, obviously, thank you so much for taking the time, and Ray and Tom and Cody, thank you also for being here with us. Interesting session.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, if you want to reach us, check us out at www.docstar.com, and you'll see us at all the community events, so we hope to have an opportunity to interact with you in the future.
All right, very good. With that, we will conclude today's event. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for attending.